reportedly a true story about George Phillips of Mississippi, who was going to bed when his wife told him that he had left the lights on outside in his workshop. George went out to turn off the lights, but he saw through the window that people were in there in the process of stealing his tools. He immediately went back into the house and phoned the police, who asked, "Are they inside your house?" George answered, "No, they're out in my workshop." The officer replied that all the officers were busy right now, and that he should simply lock his door and a patrol car would be sent out when one was available. George said, "Okay," hung up, stayed right where he was, and slowly counted to 30, and then called the police again. "Hello, I called you a minute ago because there were burglars in my workshop." "Well, you don't have to worry about them now because I've just shot them all." Then he hung up. In less than 5 minutes, 3 squad cars, an armed response unit, and an ambulance showed up, and the police caught the burglars red-handed. But one of the officers said to George, "I thought you told me that you had shot them." To which George replied, "And I thought you told me that there were no officers available." Now, I would not recommend trying to do this to get the attention of the police, but I did use this story to grab your attention this evening. Listen to these words of the Apostle Paul, written while he was in a Roman prison. "I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want." Philippians 4:12. Do you consider yourself a content person? Are you satisfied with your life? Are you content with your job? Do you and your spouse get along well? Or maybe you're single and you think, "If only I were married, then I would be happy." Or maybe you're married and you think, "If only I were single again." Are you happy with your income? Do you feel that you have been paid what you're worth? Are you aware that the average income of a Major League Baseball player this year is nearly $4.5 million? Of course, some baseball stars are being paid millions more than that, but other ball players are struggling along on the minimum salary of only $545,000 a year. When the Apostle Paul says, "I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation," it seems to me that he deserves a hearing. Paul is getting old. He doesn't have much, yet once he was rich. His health is beginning to decline, but once he was strong. Now he is in prison, but once he was free. Yet he says, "I have learned the secret of being content." There are 2 major points I want us to consider this evening: the enemies of contentment and then the sources of contentment. There are several enemies of contentment, and the first is unrealistic expectations. Many of our grandparents and great-grandparents grew up during the Great Depression and had very little. And when they married, they had to work long and hard to get what they needed. But today it seems when many young people get married, they expect to have everything from day one that it took their parents years to accumulate. The level of expectations has changed. Again, sometimes people get married and then discover that their spouse is not perfect. Or they go to work and discover that their boss isn't perfect. And their friends aren't always perfect either. Perhaps they become a Christian, thinking Christians are perfect, and that they too would be perfect once they become a Christian. But they find out that's not the case either. They're still being attacked by temptations, and sometimes Christians do sin. So there is disappointment and discontent simply because of unrealistic expectations. A second enemy of contentment is unfair comparisons. When you compare yourself to others, you're sure to find someone else more attractive or more gifted and talented than you, someone younger or stronger, and you'll always be discontent if you're constantly comparing yourself to them. The Bible never says, be content with who you are, but it does say, be content with what you have. We are to be ambitious, but ambitious for the right things. Now let's look at two sources of contentment. The first source of contentment is an attitude of gratitude. All the way through Philippians, Paul talks about attitude, and he is saying, if you have an attitude that causes you to be grateful for everything God has given you, then you'll find contentment. Alistair MacLean told about Johann Tauler, a German preacher of the 14th century. One day, Tauler met a beggar. God give you a good day, my friend, he said. The beggar answered, I thank God I've never had one. Then Tauler said, God give you a happy life, my friend. I thank God, said the beggar, I'm never unhappy. Tauler asked, what do you mean? Well, said the beggar, when the weather is fine, I thank God. When it rains, I thank God. When I have plenty, I thank God. When I am hungry, I thank God. And since God's will is my will, and whatever pleases him pleases me, why should I say I'm unhappy when I'm not? Tauler looked at the man in astonishment. Who are you? He asked. I'm a king, said the beggar. Where then is your kingdom? Asked Tauler. And the beggar answered, in my heart. Isaiah 26:3 says, You will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast because he trusts in you. Now you can begin each day by saying, God, this is going to be a tough day. I hate my life. I hate my work. I hate my family. I don't know how in the world I'm going to make it. Or you can say, God, thank you for this new day you've given me. Help me do something today that will last for all eternity. Use this day, Father, to your glory, and use me to your glory too. The second source of contentment is to seek to please Jesus and quit worrying about pleasing people. Jesus said, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Matthew 6:33. That is a lesson we've never really learned, but if we do, then we'll discover one of the secrets of being content. And Paul tells us, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. Philippians 4:13. Bill McCartney retired as the head coach of the University of Colorado football team a number of years ago. His reason for retirement was not because he was unsuccessful as a coach. His teams had won the national championship many times. They were also in the top 10 many of times. McCartney said that he retired because he wanted to reevaluate his priorities. And during that year, he rededicated his life and talents to Christ. And through his efforts into founding the great gatherings of men that came to be known as Promise Keepers. In 1 Thessalonians 2:4, Paul says, we are not trying to please men, but God. And may that dedication be evident in our lives too. Now, if you have someone who cares about you, someone who really loves you, someone who prays for you, someone who encourages you, and if you truly treasure that kind of a relationship, may you soon, like Paul, be able to say, I've learned to be content in whatever the circumstances. How about you? Do you have peace this evening? Are you content? If you are not, then one of the secrets of contentment from the Apostle Paul, accepting Jesus as your Savior, making him the Lord of your life. As we are about to stand and sing, if you have any needs, I hope that you will come and let us help you.